What's going on? I'm joined by a great friend, historian in the University of California system, and vice president of legislation for UC-AFT, Trevor Griffey. Welcome to the Disinfo Detox.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And, in this program, we talk a lot about media coverage of things in the news and how well or how poorly they cover them. And so I just kind of wonder, generally speaking, before we get into some of the nuts and bolts of Trump's war with higher education, what have you made of the media coverage of Trump and his war with higher education?
Well, I think I'd say two things. The first is media coverage of higher education tends to be poor. And that's because they focus on a very small slice and generalize out to say higher education equals this one thing. And that one thing tends to be Ivy League schools and a few research universities, which are not representative of the majority of higher education institutions in the United States. And this leads into the second piece, which is that conflation done by the media is also similar to the conflation that right-wing critics of higher education have. And it provides cover for a lot of their otherwise unpopular attacks on institutions that most Americans support and have benefited from. And so if you scapegoat, attack, and demonize a so-called cultural elite, and then associate that with higher education, you can first transfer your questions of who is an elite in your populist rhetoric from the employers and the owners of property to cultural arbiters of various terms. And you can generate different kinds of resentment within the status hierarchies of higher education towards like exclusive institutions. And what that's provided cover for is that by like focusing on all these questions of who has access to Harvard and who's majoring in gender studies at Oberlin, and who protested what in terms of how Israel is being discussed at Columbia University, however important that may be, you'd never know from higher education coverage or mainstream discourse of the politics of higher education that the majority of college students are community college students. You would never know that after that, the majority of kind of like the second biggest majority is at public teaching colleges. And then after that, it's sort of a combination of for-profit colleges that are disproportionately online and non-elite private teaching colleges. And then the remainder is this tiny slice of very elite kind of Ivy institutions, and the obsessive focus on them misses both what ordinary people's experience of higher education is. It creates gross generalizations that don't apply to the whole field, and it provides cover to attack community colleges, teaching colleges, non-elite universities, et cetera, because it's like, look over there, and then there's this generalized attack. And so that all existed before Trump came into power in his second term. And you can argue that that approach to coverage, and there are a few exceptions, obviously, like trade publications like Chronicle of Higher Education and Inside Higher Education do a better job at not playing into culture wars framing. But that coverage then becomes even more problematic when people are marching out agendas, as they are in Congress right now, to potentially eliminate or limit student grants to go to school, when they're talking about eliminating or rolling back research funding, especially to public institutions. There's all this assumption that you're like sticking it to the man when you do that, but like actually you're sort of sticking it to the working class and to some degree the middle class in the US. And the elite, the kind of very wealthy, are going to remain the very wealthy anyway.
Hey, Detoxers. Thanks for tuning in to the Disinfo Detox. If you're enjoying the content, head over to nolanhigdon.substack.com for full access to the podcast as well as other original essays. Want to support the Detox? Consider becoming a paid subscriber. You'll get early and exclusive access to interviews, podcasts, essays, and more. If a subscription's not in the cards for you right now, no worries. Just like, share, subscribe, comment, and follow. It helps grow the audience and spread the word. Until next time, stay sharp, stay skeptical, and keep detoxing the disinfo.